This week on the Sports Initiative podcast, I sit down with Head of Academy Performance for Castleford Tigers, Darren Higgins. He discusses the challenges in recruitment along the M62 corridor, how being a late specialisation sport affects the academy setup, and the use of a collaborative working environment to improve the players holistically. I hope you enjoy. So Darren, first of all, how are things?
Things are good, thank you, Michael. Our under 19s and under 16 squads are able to start training next week, all being well, and that's the first time since March we've literally not been at the club, and got a lot of players obviously affected what's been going on. So yeah, everyone's really excited, looking forward to that, and all considered with the year it's been, and yeah, pretty good, thank you.
I guess obviously that's pretty challenging for kind of yourself and your team and the players not being on the grass. How have you managed to engage with them, I guess, mainly on the human level during this time?
Probably the same as most academies, teams, squads in different sports, and I just think Zoom's been absolutely massive for keeping people together. WhatsApp groups, and we were joking earlier this week, if it wasn't for Zoom and WhatsApp groups, and this happened 20, 30 years ago, it'd be really interesting to see how we would have handled it. But yeah, just a wide range of things, I suppose, depending on age groups. So with our scholarship players, which are our under 15s and 16s, a wide range of tasks. So they've been doing speaking challenges, cooking tasks. In fact, when we go back to lockdown, there were a lot of speaking challenges just around. We just use it as an opportunity to reinforce our club values, reinforce self-reflection, practices at media interviews where a parent would have a script of questions and ask the lads, their background, their aspirations, that kind of thing. Home programs, quiz nights, checking in with the player as an individual. How are you doing? How's things at home? Everyone okay? Instances where some people have been struggling and liaising with our welfare support. And a chance to do player reviews as well. A lot of player reviews, goal setting kind of tasks. And so that's been for our 15s and 16s. Our under 19s academy, in rugby league terms, that's been similar. We probably realised with them we needed to back off certain things because it was becoming a little repetitive and they were getting a little bit fed up with it. And then we gave them a month off, I think in July. And we've had the added challenge of, in our game, that we've seen the reintroduction of reserves rugby this year, which has been missing for the last 5 or 6 years. So that started, and it was the first competition to be confirmed as being cancelled for the year, whenever that was, probably May going into June, something like that. So them lads had that first blow, and then not long after that, it was confirmed that there'd be no reserves for 2021. So that were really difficult for them, managing them and kind of keeping them looking out for them, I suppose, more than anything. And what we've done in a lot of instances, we've managed to get these lads fixed up with championship clubs and League One clubs. So yeah, it's different for different age groups and programs, and every individual's different. But it's been okay, all considered. And I hear things on podcasts and see things on Twitter, and I think most environments are doing the same kind of stuff, and it was less about the rugby side of things and more about making sure the person's okay and developing the person as well, and that in turn will benefit the rugby long term anyway.
And I imagine you probably saw some quite good benefits, but also some quite interesting insights from people you wouldn't necessarily have thought.
Yeah, we've spoke about that as staff members. We've got to know people in ways that we wouldn't normally. Our setup in our context is we only get the lads 2 sessions a week at under 15s and 16s, and we're different to, for example, football, in that we use school facilities, and that'll be a booking of you start at 7 and you finish at 8, and then there's someone coming on straight after you, so you don't get that natural time to just to get to know the person and speak to them on a human level. So yeah, I'd like to think we've turned it into a real positive, and we've got to know the lads in ways that we wouldn't normally, and they've got to know us. And I think it's created opportunities to develop some leadership, to improve some communication skills, and improve some self-awareness and goal setting, and that just an opportunity to take a step back and reflect and think longer term, and get the hunger back in lads as well. They're constantly training, they're constantly playing, and I think what we've seen from them, the lads, is they've realised how much they love it, how much they've missed it, and they're raring to go again, as are we of staff, really.
Is there any particular methods you use to increase their kind of self-awareness or communication or leadership skills?
The way we coach and the way we deliver, we're very much involve the players in that process. So we use lots of questioning. We use opportunities for a bit of reflection, for example, within a session, after a session, and then linking that in with some goal setting. So doing that on a session by session, week by week basis. Play reviews, and opportunities to engage with a mental skills coach or a sports psychology, and every player is different. So some will engage with that process more than others. Some will not quite understand why they're doing it. Some are very self-aware anyway. So everyone's different, and it's supporting their needs. And I suppose just being facilitators more often than not, whether that's formally in reviews or off on the field, it's providing opportunities for that. And going back to coaching style is, right, here's a scenario. You guys have got a minute as a team. You need to work out what you're going to do, put it into practice. We as staff are going to take a step back, and we're going, okay, stop, opportunity to get back together again, work out what's working well, what you need to change. And yeah, I don't think leaders and awareness will emerge unless it's given the opportunity, and that's a real big one. What we're about, and changing our style to meet the demands of the player, or what we want them to be longer term.
So I'm going to link back round to this, because I think it comes probably into your club values in terms of and methodology in terms of the way you engage and try and produce leaders. Before we go any further, it's probably to just clarify what your actual role is and the club that you're with and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So could you do that? That'd be great.
Of course, no problem. My role is the head of youth performance. So it's similar to, I suppose, an academy manager or academy director in football terms, but without our academy or youth operation is probably much smaller scale compared to football. So the main strands of the role are to manage, to coordinate and support all aspects of our youth development provision. So that would be talent identification and recruitment, staffing structures, and making sure we've got everything we need for our young players. So good coaching, athletic development, welfare, nutrition, mental skills, education and careers, analysis, everything the player needs to make them the best they can possibly be, and making sure that's in place. Linking up with the wider club, and particularly what happens at first team on the field. So what do we want a first team player to look like, from a technical, tactical, physical and characteristic perspective. And then working with a wide range of partners and people, I suppose. So that'd be people at a parent level, coaches from local community clubs, or it might be more formal partnerships. So we've got 2 partnerships with universities, Leeds Beckett University, who support us around sports psychology and diet and nutrition, and then Leeds Trinity University, That partnership's more around strength and conditioning, so it's a pretty wide-ranging role. It's not a hands-on coaching role. It's there to support the whole process and manage the big picture, if you like.
And within that, is it your role to kind of sculpt like academy values and the academy vision, etc.?
It is, and that's not just me running my own race. That's linking in with what happens at first team level and the wider club. So the ethos of the club, the values of the club, and what I suppose it's connecting things together and then creating the environment to produce players from a technical point of view, tactical, physical, and mental. So yeah, it's linking in with the wider club and making sure our ethos, our philosophies fit within the wider club.
So what are they? If we were to come down and watch a game of, be it your first team or your younger levels, what would the characteristics and values that your players would exhibit?
There's probably things I can share and some things that I'm not able to share, but generally I'd like to think if anyone walked into a training session, they'd see first of all good people, whether that be staff, players, and generally a good feel and welcoming environment. And when we're doing talent identification and recruitment, if we don't think the person's right, regardless how good a player they are, then they're not going to get through the door in the first place. So good people, hardworking. We try to build a big theme of our youth environment is resilience, and educating people that this journey's not going to be straightforward. From walking in the door and going and playing, hopefully first team rugby, there's going to be ups and downs along the way, and players who are just mentally pretty robust, and they're able to handle that. But they're also very self-aware. They're aware of what they need to do, what it takes, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and going back to that hard-working ethos, that they're willing to do something about it, and they understand, some natural talent at a young age is not going to get them to first team level. So, and I don't think those kind of characteristics are unique to our club or our sport. I think that's a general in talent development. You need them kind of ethoses to produce players and develop young people.
And in terms of the age groups, etc., that you're working with, how low down age group wise do you go? And then I guess the next question is off the back of that, how do you go about recruiting those individuals into your program?
So we start selecting or bringing players into the club on our under 15s and 16s, so year 10 and year 11 scholarship program. That's the first on the current player pathway for the game. That's the first selection process at this moment in time. We start working with players at under 12s. So we at the club run a program called Tigers Talent Pathway, which is an open access program. It runs from under 12s all the way to 16. So there's an opportunity for people, regardless of their experience, their current abilities, their background, and they may come from different sports, they can attend that program. That's an opportunity for us to start looking at them, putting play development provision into them. So that starts at 12s and 13s. That's like a joint age group. And then there's a separate program for the under 14s, and it's probably under 13s and under 14s we start to look and talent ID with selection onto scholarship in mind. But we continue to run the Tigers Talent Pathway program at 15s and 16s, just mindful of we will miss people. People might not be shining at that moment in time, but we're a late specialisation sport, so just because someone's not quite ready at that moment in time doesn't mean that should be end of their journey. So they'll continue to access player development provision, and this pathways into the scholarship 15s and 16s. The next level above that is academy rugby. So the academy this year has been under 18s with reserves in from above that, and bridging that gap from academy rugby to first team, which is a fair jump. Because of costs and implications of COVID, there'll be no reserves rugby next season. So the academy program will go to under 19s again. But yeah, all in all, we start working at under 12s, and under 19s is a last run on the ladder at the moment. But as a game, I think everyone's in agreement that reserves and that bridge from academy to first team is essential. And without all that, it's probably flawed for me. So that's our pathway. When we do talent ID, I said earlier, we're not just looking at good players, and we're very mindful of things like relative age effect and early specialisation based on the physical characteristics of the game. And it's easy for a player, if they're older within their age group, they're physically more mature, they're going to stand out. And we've got staff who we've put a lot of education into around that and making them mindful of that. And yeah, we've also got to consider backgrounds, the level of coaching they've received, the level of the team that they're playing in on a week-to-week basis. What are the opposition like? Is there things going on at home? So it's probably a bit of a can of worms. So we put 18 months work into looking at players and getting to know them on talent ID. And in the instances where players come and attend the TTP program, the open access thing, we get to know them a lot more. So going to watch on a Sunday morning is probably a snapshot, and then we get to know the person, how dedicated they are, how hard they work, all those kind of things. We get to know the person a lot more, as opposed to the traditional method of just watching on a Sunday morning and getting a snapshot of a person stroke player.
I'm going to link back to the under 19 shift and reserve, because I think that'll be interesting to see that kind of pathway that jumps across. But in regards to the challenges you face with players that maybe early specialise in other sports, because obviously if you look at something like football, for example, where in their academies they have kids in from under 9s.
Yeah,
that's quite a big disparity between where you could potentially see them or get them compared to where other sports who specialise early can get them or might get them. Do you see any benefits or any challenges in that situation?
Yeah, I see benefits to it, but I also see there's two ways to look at it. So typically, you might see a player at a young age, and he was a standout player at a young age, and he's the person who goes on and he goes on to make it. And in many ways, there's no real surprise. And yet, our current system, we're not able to put meaningful or extra provision into him and support into him until he's 14, 15. So he's come through and he's a good player, but how much better could he have been if you got more into him at a younger age? But I see the flip side as well, and our player pathway. It started previously with under 12s selection and representation opportunities, but there are a lot of research and it's backed by evidence, I suppose, that lads who were getting selected at a young age weren't necessarily the lads who were going on to make it, and they were all first quartile players in many ways. So physically they were more mature, more advanced. So, and then we've seen a lot of examples of lads who weren't selected going back 10 years at under 12s, under 13s, under 14s, and they're the ones who have gone on to make it. And the argument is they're the ones who had it tough. They developed resilience. They had to develop a better skill set. They needed to become tactically more aware, etc., rather than just rely on the physical nature of the game. So there's two ways. There's two ways to look at it. I personally would be in favour of starting working with players on a scholarship program at a younger age, but at the same time, if the club wanted to offer that provision, then that'd be on the basis that they also have to work with to run open access programs as well for players who weren't necessarily selected. But they were still getting ongoing provision and support. So I guess our challenge as a game is resources compared to, for example, football. But yeah, it is a late specialisation sport, so we don't need to work with players at, for example, under nines, under tens, things like that. But it'd be interesting in future years to see how the pathway changes, if it does change at all.
And for you guys, obviously, up until that point, I imagine they're just playing kind of grassroots league in and around the area. Is that the case?
It will, yeah, that'd be the case. In some instances, depending on the school, I mean, in our area in Castleford, we've got a local school who rugby league is very much at the forefront of what they do from a sporting sense, and the local game's pretty strong, but nothing like, for example, football and the amount of people what play football. But yeah, all our boys will play community rugby league, and that's where they're identified. And in some instances, sport rugby league at school, and they will dip in and out of other sports as well.
And then, are there challenges between kind of crossover points between clubs? Because I mean, you look at the Super League, for example, majority of the teams are northern based. You've got obviously like Leeds, Castleford, St Helens, Wigan and stuff, all in that northern region. Does it become a challenge where you end up competing for players at ages like under 13s, under 14s?
It really does, yeah. It's the M62 corridor, as it's often called, and yeah, typically, if you go to an under 14 game in the Castleford area, you'll get scouts from Wakefield, from Bradford, from Huddersfield, from Leeds, and then the clubs in the northwest are also at times seen. So Warrington, St Helens. And I think the reason for that is just like many sports, is participation's falling. So there's not as many people playing the game. So that puts some pressure on clubs to, identify and recruit those the best young talent, or the best perceived young talent. We've run programs in the past. So I talked about our Tigers Talent Pathway program, which is an open access program. We're looking at ways and we can access other talent pools. So we've got an example of a lad who's attended that program. He's come from the Midlands kind of area, a rugby union background. He was on Leicester Tigers books or one of their hubs. He'd not played rugby league until he attended our program. We actually took we thought it was a gamble on him, and we signed him on scholarship. So he went through our under 15s program. That year he played for England, and then he's gone on now, and he's played Super League at 17, 18 years of age, and 3-4 years prior to that he'd not even played the game at all. So we feel, and again, resources is a challenge, but we feel there's hundreds and maybe thousands of lads like that across the country, but they just don't get the opportunity to play the game because traditionally the game's not strong in the area. So there's a couple of projects we've got in the background what we're hoping to bring to life in the next 12 to 24 months, where we'll provide more opportunities for non-rugby league players in non-traditional areas, and look to that talent transfer aspect, I suppose. But yeah, going back to your question, it's a real challenge. There's not enough players playing the game, and I think that's across a lot of sports, and that puts a lot of pressure on that identification and recruitment process.
And is there a particular way that you kind of sell your club, if you like? Is there a particular way that you say, if you come into this environment, this is the type of player you could potentially come, or type of person you could potentially become?
Yeah, it really is, and we're not a club who are blessed with facilities or resources. So we talk, well, first of all, the first thing we'll say to a player and his parents or guardian is that they're not promised a single thing. So if they chose to join our club, we wouldn't promise them they'd gain a contract after 2 years' time, they'd play Super League, and we basically promise nothing to anyone individually. We talk about this is our environment, and you get these things as a bare minimum, but the rest is over to you. So if you want to do extra work with the coaches or get extra nutrition, athletic development, we will 100% support that and give you everything you ask for. But our ethos, it's about the individual. So if they join a program, we'll play games at under 15s and 16s level, but we're not really interested in. So things like pre-season, season, those words are banned because we're not about that. We're not about producing a team to win some games at 15s and 16s level because it's not important. It doesn't really matter. Those games are a part of a wider player development program. So yeah, very much it's about the individual and improving them as individual players rather than we'll get the best lads we can together to create a team who are going to win some games. So that's our approach. I think we're very personal. It's not a case of, and yeah, I think we're very personal. I think and it sounds a bit cheesy, but it's a real family club. The whole place is really connected together. So, and probably just because of circumstances, we don't have much in terms of facilities. So often we talk about a player will train on a, for example, a Saturday morning. That might be an under 15s player, and he'll be in our gym or walking around the facilities, and he'll be interacting and mixing with first team players who have played international rugby league, and that's probably, I'm guessing, something that doesn't happen in other sports, just because there's so much in terms of facilities, there's so much in terms of resources. So those kind of things bring everyone together, and it's really pleasing to see is they're made to feel welcome, and the first team players show an interest in them, and they get to know the names. And you might walk into the physio room and there's literally an under 14 player on one bed and then New Zealand international on the other, which is it's a bit bizarre, really. But yeah, there are strands what we're about. We're not about promising people anything. They've got to come in and earn that right. We provide everything they need in terms of coaching, analysis, nutrition, S&C, sports psychology, welfare, everything they need. They get as much as first team players in many ways, but apart from that, it's over to them. It's what you're going to do with this opportunity, and it goes back to, we've got to recruit the right characters. We've got to recruit people or players who understand, this is the first step on the ladder. There's a lot of hard work. There's going to be ups and downs, and also educating parents around that as well. In many instances, the lads have come and they've been the better players, and it's been pretty straightforward. But in reality, it's not going to be like that. So giving them everything they need, educating them, giving them a wide range of provision, they're important strands. And I think if you get that right and you get the person right, and you've got a chance. But law of averages says it doesn't work out for everybody. And we've just actually, sorry.
No, go on, carry on.
We've just actually lost a player. He's gone to Australia. They've paid a transfer fee for him. He's only just turned 18 years of age, and he walked through the door. Like many, he's identified as having potential and talented, and then there's been instances of lads at his age group who were no longer at the club for whatever reason. And he got the same opportunities, he got the same provision, but the difference is how focused he was, how much he were willing to work hard, and that's almost obsessed with what he wanted to do and understanding what he needed to do. So and I guess it's a life lesson that the old saying, you'll get out what you put into it. And he's, although we're disappointed to lose him, we're also really, really proud. He's found his way into I believe the 35-man squad for the Newcastle Knights NRL squad in Australia at 17, 18 years of age. And I joked to him last week, it was only 3-4 years ago you were playing under 14s rugby on a public park, and now you're going to be in that. And that's just, as I say, just through absolute dedication, focus, hard work. And he's a shining kind of example of what you can become if you're willing to work hard.
I guess a question for me: how much does the first team sculpt of what you recruit lower down? So, if they're playing a particular brand of rugby league, does that affect what you have to do lower down to try and help them, like the players, be able to achieve that pathway through to the first team?
Yeah, we've got to recruit and nurture players with that end goal in mind, I suppose, of what a Castleford player looks like. So yeah, to a certain extent, but more than anything is we're looking for potential, and I'm a believer if you've got the right character anyway, and they're willing to work hard, then they're able to improve or change their game anyway. So it's difficult because if you watch a under-14s rugby league game and then watch a Super League game, it probably looks different in many different ways. And also players have got different backgrounds. Some have received better coaching than others. Some have played the game longer than others. Some of them are physically more advantaged or disadvantaged. So it's really, it's pretty difficult if I'm honest, but we're a big believer in if you recruit the right people and characters, and they're willing to work hard and have got that growth mindset and self-awareness, communication, leadership, and they're just good people, then you can shape them from a rugby point of view anyway. But yeah, going back to your question, is we do recruit with the type of player that the first team want in mind. We do that to a certain extent.
And does that do all clubs kind of do that? Will all the clubs do that, or will some just have an academy vision and they just produce that type of player?
It's probably not for me to say, to be honest. I think some clubs may be guilty of who are the best players at this moment in time, and that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to become first team or elite level players. But it's difficult because no one's got a crystal ball, and I just think the challenge for people doing talent identification and recruitment is vast, just because of we probably recruit, and this is not choice of clubs, this is the governance of the game, is we recruit at the worst possible age group, when maturation, puberty starting to kick in, and you look at a typical game and you might have lads who are 6'2" with a beard, and then there's a lad who clearly is a lot younger or he's behind in terms of maturation. So, and that's not just the physically, but emotionally, mentally, all those kind of things. I think it's really, really difficult. But just again, I'll say if you can get to know the player and underneath the player, what the person's like, what their background like, their upbringing, have they got a right attitude, are they a good person, then you've probably got a chance anyway. But it's very difficult selecting players in our game and in all sports, I imagine, at these age groups.
We'll link to this because I think it's important. Obviously, you mentioned here a lot about the physical characteristics. Now, naturally, the nature of the game, there is physical loading on the players. It's high intensity, high impact. So, if we look at it from the younger age groups going through, I guess, to the removal of that reserve team league for this year, how much of a challenge is that to have like your late maturers that obviously you're hoping will come through and progress and grow eventually to be able to compete? And how big a jump do you think that's going to be from under 19s rugby to then have to try and compete against some of the best athletes, not just in England, but from the outside? It looks like we're having more of an export from New Zealand, Australia, etc. come across, who some of those guys are huge, haven't seen them. So how big a jump do you think that's going to be for the players?
It's vast. It's a really difficult step and journey for a young player to take. So to play under 19s rugby around players of your own age group or maybe slightly younger, to go and play against players who have been playing for 10 years, access full-time training, the jump is just, it's ridiculous, really. It's one what shouldn't happen without reserves. And for whatever reason, I think it was financial. Probably 6-7 years ago, reserves rugby was scrapped, and I just find that amazing. We talk about we are a late specialisation sport, and then we take away the last bridge from academy to first team rugby away, and so many players need time, and it won't be till 21, 22 where they break in. And I think Jamie Peacock is a great example of that. So he was the England and Great Britain captain for a number of years, and he talks about his journey being that rocky road, a bumpy journey. We're never selected at young age groups. And he always got missed out and overlooked, and he kept persevering, and eventually he found his way, but found a way and to play first team rugby at 21, 22, got an opportunity and became one of the best players our game's ever produced, and an England captain, as I say, for a long period of time. But back in those days, there was a reserve system, but if he was in the current programme, he's probably not going to come through because he wasn't ready at 18, 19 years of age. So it's something we absolutely need to look to as a sport. I said earlier, the system's flawed without reserves. These examples of lads who burst onto the scene and they're able to maintain that, but they're probably the exceptions. And there's a danger as well of them being overexposed, depending on what playing position they play. The physical nature of the game means at 17, 18, 19 years of age, if you're playing first team in certain positions, you're going to take a lot of physical hammer, and your body's probably not ready for that. And then the other aspect is mentally, are you ready for that? The vigours of Super League rugby week in, week out. And if, for example, if reserves is in there, then you can be pulled out and you can be placed back into a reserve system and play at a level what's challenging enough. So it may be a player that's pulled out of first team and goes back into the academy under 19s playing against his own age, but that challenge is probably not great enough to keep him developing. So there's reasons for it around finances and the implications of what's happened this year with COVID, why it's not going to happen next year. But I think as a sport, we have to get that back in place in 2022.
Is there any ideas in the interim how you're going to support those players? Is there going to be an extension to the youth program, or is there going to be placement elsewhere? What will that look like?
Yeah, so under 19s, the academy competition will be under 19s next year as opposed to under 18s. So to give that final year back to the lads who have missed it this year, and they've got no reserves to go back to. But other than that, if you've got, for example, players on your books in your first team squad who are not going to be playing first team rugby week in, week out, then it's probably being loaned out and playing in the Championship or League One and getting exposure to that level of competition, which is okay. But in an ideal world, personally, I think you'd keep the player at your own club, playing in your own systems, and being coached by your coaches in that reserve competition. But yeah, that'll probably be the case in many instances. Lads will go out and play on loan.
Obviously, you mentioned there kind of the physical nature of it and how physically tasking it is. Just to give people a perspective, if you're looking at a top-end player, how many contacts are they going into per game? What's that looking like? What distances are they covering, etc.?
Yeah, it's unbelievable in some instances. So in certain positions, you'll get a player averaging between 50 and 60 tackles a game, and that's without even carrying the ball. So that's not typical of every single position, but players who are playing, for example, at loose forward, hooker, they will typically make them a number of tackles, probably 6-7K, and then just a lot of back-to-back effort. So the physical demands in those positions in the middle are really, really taxing. And there's been a slight change to rules and interpretations this year. So the game's introduced a 6 again rule. So when these infringements or too much wrestle, for example, on the floor from the defensive team to slow the play of the ball down, rather than the game stopping and a penalty being awarded, the 6 again rules come into play where the tackle count will start again. So it may be a team have just come up with 5 defensive efforts, which is pretty taxing when you're talking about players at around 100k, managing them again and again, and then the tackle restart. So that's meaning there's a lot more back-to-back efforts and a lot more fatigue in the game. But the reason being, it opens the game up. It allows players to play on the front foot, and I suppose play with a little bit more freedom, based on the space, what's kind of there, and the fatigue of big players. So the game's probably going to change a little bit in that those players that play in the middle were typically the guys that'll take you forward, and their game's based on size and strength and being combative. They're probably going to have to be a little bit more endurance based as well in order to meet the new demands of the rule.
And how's that challenging for you in a youth environment? Because I imagine you could have players that are maybe physically very capable in an under 18 or a 19 game, and then they could be those high tackle counts, high ball carriers, high collision type players. Then all of a sudden you go into Super League and you're playing against these internationals, and whereas before you might have been gaining 4 or 5 yards, all of a sudden now you hit the line and they're just going, no thanks, down you go. How does that affect those players, and how do you try to prepare them for that journey?
I guess the only way you can prepare them for it is to make training, making sure it replicates the demands of the game, and at times taking players above those demands as well. So making training pretty tough, but at the same time managing it right, so there's enough recovery, there's enough they're fresh enough to be exposed to other demands, for example in the gym, or skill demands, etc. So just through making training as tough and as game like as possible, and getting that balance right. And that's going to be a real challenge now when we start training again in December, considering the lads have not been at the club since March. They've not had any physical contact, so they've been doing lots of running and the weights programs and things like that, but they've not been exposed to the physical nature of the game for a long time. So that's something we'll need to gradually build up, and the bodies are probably going to be in for a shock again, which will be interesting. But they tend to be pretty tough types anyway, and they'll want to do that, but we'll have a challenge just to manage it and gradually build it up.
Is there a jump from statistics from the 18s age group into first team in terms of number of collisions and distances and all that type of stuff, or is it relatively similar, just obviously different with just different in terms of the level of the game and the type of impact that you're going to be going through?
Just everything's more demanding. I think typically if you watched a under-19s academy game compared to a Super League game, there's probably more errors, and you've not got that consistency of players being able to go back to back and maintain an intense level for a prolonged period. So yeah, just everything will be just greater. The more collisions, more meters covered, higher pace, etc. It's just probably considerable. I don't have any kind of data or anything like that to bring up right now, but yeah, just everything is so much more demanding.
One thing I wanted to ask you, because I think that yours is a sport where you see a lot of risk and reward. So obviously you mentioned there you've got a tackle count, and depending where people are on the pitch during a tackle count, kind of makes a decision on whether you kick to kind of gain territory and try and chase down the kick and make a tackle, or whether you're trying to, make a line break to then go and score a try or gain yardage that way. And one of the things you see a lot is obviously offloading or creative passing or that type of stuff, which is really good. How would you go about, I guess, one, teaching players those skills, but two, trying to teach them the decision-making process of what's a sensible-ish risk to maybe that was a silly with very little reward?
Yeah. I guess it starts with having a clear philosophy of what your players are able to do. So if you talk about low risk and playing conservative and getting to a kick and completing your set and doing that again and again and again, and if that's your ethos and that's the way you play and practice and players go outside that, then that doesn't really fit. But at our club, our players are encouraged to play with skill and to make decisions and back themselves. And so we've got to be mindful, or our coaches have got to be mindful, if they're encouraging them to do that, at times it's not going to come off. So we can't start shouting at people or bringing players off the field because they've done that, because we're asking them to do that. And I guess, again, it goes back to practice. The only way they're going to understand that balance and get a feel for what's right and what's wrong is through practice and making sure your practice replicates the game and the demands of the game. So we play lots of small-sided games, lots of decision-making, lots of touches on the ball, and finding ways to create games to promote certain skills and promote certain decisions. But at our club we do play with an element of skill and an expansive kind of style. So as much as you want that to be perfect and not see errors, but being mindful that it's going to go wrong from time to time, but supporting the players. So, if that does happen, well, how do you deal with it? How do we transition? Are you going to beat yourself up, or are you just going to accept that's part of the game and go on with it? So I think it all comes down to practice, and practicing aligned to a clear philosophy, and then the coach's coaching behaviours match that philosophy. So, it wouldn't be right to encourage play with risk, play with a bit of freedom within a structure, and then be yakking people off the field if they have made an error.
Is there a particular practice that you like or that you would use in that circumstance?
We're really big as a department on just lots and lots of games. So we try not to make practice isolated or we try to promote a bit of chaos and a bit of the term nowadays is messy practice, isn't it? And there's no point going out and in our game, and it still happens, and there's a place for it, where the last session before a game, teams will typically play unopposed, so they'll run their plays and their structures against fresh air, and it's absolutely flawed. There is a place for it, but the game is messy, it's chaotic. You've got defenders, you've got things what are out of your control. So why would you practice in a way what doesn't replicate the game? So lots and lots of small-sided games and messy and chaotic practice are kind of ethoses that we try to promote. And we talk about doing the same thing but in lots of different ways. So it might be that we're trying to promote a certain skill or a certain ethos, but there's lots and lots of different games you can do and constrain games in different ways to promote that, and keeping players engaged, keeping them stimulated, as opposed to doing the same thing over and over again. And sometimes that might be just a slight change of a rule or a pitch space. Again, making practice fit to the demands of the game on a Saturday afternoon.
And do you provide psychological support for players? Because I can imagine that, particularly if you're in a half-back role where you're getting a lot of the ball, a lot of decisions to make, and you're going to make some mistakes along with some positive stuff. How do you support the players to kind of understand that those mistakes are going to happen because of the brand of rugby that we're asking you to play? But, it's almost got to be a switch where it's amnesia, you forget about it and we're on to the next one. How do you support them in that process?
We support players from a psychological point of view in that we've got, for example, in our academy environment, we've got 3 mental skills coaches who work with players on an individual basis. We do a lot of education. And then what we've done this period during the summer and while we've not been at the club, we've put together a footprint of what we want a player to look like from a psychological characteristics point of view. But it's not a case of the site working in isolation with the players. So the guy who leads on our sports psychology provision, he's very much a part of the coaching team. So when we meet to plan sessions, review sessions, discuss what's happening, he's in the thick of that, and his opinions and perspectives, although they're different, they're as valued as the coaches. And we try not to, again, I said they don't work in isolation, so they'll influence the way we coach in some ways. So we might have a certain emphasis around so there's an education session around, let's say, goal setting or distraction control. We'll make sure that in the next session or the week or the month ahead, the coaches facilitate opportunities to put them skills into practice. So yeah, we're not there yet, but I think we're getting to a stage where our sports psych and our coaches work hand in hand rather than stand alone, which is traditionally what happens, I suppose.
And are they able to come up pitch side and observe the lads kind of during sessions or during games?
Yeah, absolutely. They'll be pitch side. They might feed something back into a coach regarding an individual or something generally. So yeah, they are part of the coaching team. They're not separate. Some players buy into it more than others. I think we're developing our understanding around it a lot more, and that's the same with the strength and conditioning side of things. It's not a case of the S&C will do 20 minutes and then they'll go to the rugby coaches. We don't get much time with these players. How can we double our bubble, I suppose, and we're covering all aspects. So we're covering sight, we're covering technical, tactical, and the physical demands all at once. And I think the terms we're developing our knowledge. It's a tactical periodization. So how do we want our players to perform in all those areas, and how can we design our practices so we're doing everything all at once as they would in a game situation? Your physical demands and your decision making or your tactical stuff are not all done in isolation in a game. So why would you do it separately in practice?
And has that taken you time to get to the point where you have that collaborative effort? Because I know you can watch documentaries, you can talk from personal experiences. Sometimes it can seem stagnant where everyone's all over the place. You have psych that are in their office, strength conditioning coaches are in the gym, video. Yeah. Has it taken you a while to get to the stage where everyone works collaboratively and is able to kind of support the player out pitch side, all have an input which is invaluable to the team and the individual?
Yeah, it's definitely taken time, and I'm not saying we are perfect or we're there yet, but we're working towards that and we're constantly improving. And you're probably talking years of. I guess what's really important is continuity of people and staff, and an element of new people coming in with new ideas as well, and just having the time to reflect, to talk honestly, to get to know each other and identify what's working well, what you can improve, but being really open to changing a new idea and looking other sports or other environments. And so yeah, it's definitely taken time, and I'm not saying for a minute that we're there and we've reached utopia, but I think if you went back a few years, we're a lot more aligned and closer together than we have been previously.
And I guess that links back to what you mentioned earlier about having the right people in the building, so getting the right coaches in place to know that this is an addition, not taken away from their pitch time, or getting the right psych in place who wants to be out there on the pitch and realizes they're a part of the process, not the process, and whatnot.
Yeah, and I think when we first introduced that, it was something new, and people had not really seen in rugby league too much. They've seen aspects of it, and then probably a little bit of intimidation and uncertainty of what it's about, and then the realization that as our coaches, when they were players, they were coached by, in some instances, coaches who were good sports psychologists, but they were never termed that. They were termed the rugby coach, but actually, what they were doing and the way they worked, they were doing the things the sports psychs are talking about without actually realizing it. So, just bringing it all together, and we often talk about, it's okay having technically and tactically the most gifted player you've come across, but if he can't handle pressure, if he can't handle things going wrong, if he can't communicate, if he can't lead, then he's not going to reach his potential anyway. So that psych side of things is as much, probably personally, I think it's more needed than the technical and tactical side of it, because you can develop those things with the right kind of mindset and the right characteristics.
I think it's interesting. I think that at the moment there seems to be a big shift in people's thought process around this topic, and I think a lot of people are realizing actually you need to get the mentality side right, whatever that be. If it might be that you allow others to a bit more of a leash in terms of the way you speak to them or the way they act. It might be you need this player struggles with failure, so how are we going to support them with that? But it seems like at the moment there's a massive shift to actually go, this is a equally important part of sessions, important part of players' development and stuff, which is good to see. I guess linking back to what we mentioned earlier, is you mentioned about trying to get self-awareness and leadership in your group. I guess in a practical setting, how's that gone, and how, with the scenario games, all that type of stuff, how do you go about doing that, trying to get increased leaders in your group?
Well, we've not all the new. We've got so many new ideas we've put together this last summer, and we've just not had the chance to do anything with it. So I guess we'll find out a lot more when we start back. But naturally, when coaches are coaching, their focus is on technical, tactical aspects, and it's easy to forget, or they're not comfortable or familiar with, right, how do I apply the stuff what the sports psych's talking about? How do I apply that on the field? So we've produced a resource to encourage that, and it's often more about coaches becoming the facilitator and taking a step back and creating a scenario for players to reflect, for players to lead, to communicate, and to self-organize. So we've spent hours and hours putting that together, and it would be great just to get on the field and a chance to put it into practice. And I guess it's not all going to be plain sailing. It's something new, and in some regards it'll be something new for the players as well. So but it might be a bit bumpy, and they might not be sure, but it's there for a reason. It's there to create better, more robust characters and leaders, etc. So it'd be interesting to see how it goes.
How have they received it so far, and is there any surprises with the work that you've already done?
Yeah, so the promotion of questioning, creating scenarios, and self-policing and working it out, I think it's been a little shock, but it's been if you use the word journey, we've been on for a while, and it's slowly coming to our practice in our environment. So it's not a total surprise, but when we did the Zoom a month or two ago, and it was purely player led, I think that were a little bit surprising, a little bit different. You see some players thinking it shouldn't be like this, and well, what are the coaches doing, and not quite understanding it. So it's probably going to take a little bit of time, but we've talked about when we're in meetings, we want things to be player led, and at times staff coaches will just take a step back, and it's you own the environment, you challenge each other, you set your own standards. So yeah, I guess for them it's a little bit different, but their buy-in's really good, and what we're seeing is people emerging as leaders, as better communicators who wouldn't normally. They'd be happy just to take a step back and listen, and yeah, I'll do as you tell me. But yeah, the early signs are, and we've had some young lads who have trained with the first team after lockdown, and they're in the first year out of under-16s rugby, and the feedback we've got is that they're doing well, doing great rugby-wise, but characters, they're good, they're fitting in, they're confident, they can mix socially, they can lead at times. Don't get me wrong, they're not at the front, and that's probably a bit of a realisation we've had as a department is we can produce players, but we've got to get the character right, and especially if we talked about earlier, there's no reserves and an under-19 player goes and plays first team, then he's got to be not just a good all-round player, but he's got to be an all-round robust character to be able to handle that. So yeah, certainly a bit of a change, and I think it's the right way to go. It feels right, and we're getting a lot of staff buy-in.
And have you had any challenges with players that haven't really bought into it yet, or anyone that's a little bit like, this isn't for me, don't enjoy public speaking, for example, or anything like that?
No, they've all bought in. They're clearly in some instances not comfortable, and it's that tough love of keep throwing them up there and putting them in them scenarios and seeing some real changes, and then them realising as well, it's, yeah, I don't like doing this, but I'm a lot better now, and if I keep doing this, I'm going to be much better at it, and then that's going to benefit their game on the field, and they might not, they might not see the link initially, but in time when they look back, I'd like to think some players will be unrecognisable because, we've got to do it for certain positions. The halfback positions, they manage a team, they tend to control the game, so you're looking after everyone else. So your communication, your leadership needs to be really good, and therefore so does your confidence. So some players and people have that naturally, and some people that evolves in time, and we've got to provide opportunities and scenarios where we can improve that player in that area, or they're given the opportunity to do that.
And has it informed you guys, I guess, in a positive way for any other players? So ones that, as you said earlier, maybe are a little bit quiet and just go along with what other people are saying. Have you looked at them and gone, actually, they might be the ones that are ready to jump into that first team environment because they can, although they're quiet, they actually do take on all the information we're asking, and all that type of stuff. Has it informed any of your thinking regarding that?
Yeah, in some instances, I think there's been some surprises, and there's people emerging who you wouldn't normally expect, and in some, I think it's just reinforced and enhanced what they're already good at as well. So I said earlier, we're all about the individual and what the individual needs, and trying to provide the right opportunities for certain players in certain scenarios. So yeah, but at the same time, it's early days, and we've not been at the club for 8-9 months. So it'll be interesting to look at it in another 6 to 9 months, and when hopefully, touch wood, we're playing again, and we've got more instances of lads getting opportunity to train with the first team. I guess time will tell, but the early signs are really, really promising, and again, it's reinforced that we're on the right path as a department and the way we're working with players.
And I guess all this really leads to, as you alluded to there, that jump into the first team, into an environment where obviously you're trying to win. Although the rest of it to that point is development and stuff, and there will be an element of development for the players at that level. Ultimately, it comes down to, do you win the game at the weekend or whenever that is? How do you prepare players for that last jump? Because I imagine it's a change of scenery, it's a change of physicality, it's a change of mentality. How can you best prepare them to make that jump to hopefully have success?
It takes time, doesn't it? then hopefully kicking on and playing at that level is a result of years and years of hard work and holistic development. But again, just making practice, as demanding as it possibly can, and matching the demands of the game. So I talked earlier about the example of it's traditionally in the game, teams will run an unopposed session before the game to tweak the team plays and all that kind of thing. But is that going to be? Does that help us tomorrow, or does that help us the player long term? It's probably not going to help the player long term for sure. So making the environment as tough and demanding as possible, just really simple, and supporting them holistically, S&C on the field, the psych stuff, giving them everything they need. And I guess what's important for us at the minute is, and it's difficult because our players are typically part-time, they work or they're in education, and they need to be exposed to first team training, but the first team boys are full-time, so that's difficult sometimes. But I think it's really important that they spend time in that environment, come out of it and go back in, as opposed to being called up, having a week's training and playing Super League rugby. So yeah, it's a long process, I suppose, but exposure to first team training and intensity, and where appropriate, first team pre-season games is really important.
And one thing I'm seeing more and more, kind of when you read up on the subject, is you're seeing a lot of players go to and from the NRL into the Super League and vice versa, which it seemed like a few years ago that didn't happen so much, and particularly with our players going out there. Is that something that's the case, and how do you feel that's benefiting the game, both in this country in terms of the teams, but then also, I guess, on a national level, how's that affecting us and the progress of players and the standard of the game in general?
It's probably not helping our domestic competition because the better players are leaving. It's not yet to benefit us on the international stage either. Hopefully that'll change in time, but without doubt, the NRL it's a level above what Super League is. I think that's fair to say, and I think the majority of people would agree with that. So, in essence, you'd like to think that in turn benefit the national team sooner or later, because there's more players being exposed to playing at that level of competition, and that's week in, week out, as opposed to, I think if you could say our top 4, maybe 5 teams could compete at that NRL level, but then the other half of our competition would probably struggle, and you don't get that consistent challenge on a week-to-week basis. So yeah, it's definitely not helping our competition, but hopefully in time it will benefit the national team.
Do you think long term, do you think it will allow more players to get into the pathway, whereas you may have had those superstar players staying at clubs for a long period of time because they're now leaving? Do you think that eventually you'll get to a stage where you're able to push more and more boys through because of that?
Yeah, in some ways, but I don't think that's our biggest challenge in terms of young players being given an opportunity. I think the biggest challenge is players coming from the other way. So players coming from Australia, from New Zealand, and not always better. I think it's something the game's done traditionally for a long period of time, and I'm all for the very best coming over and adding to the competition, adding to teams and adding to environments. But I think in some instances, some of these players are blocking pathways, and I'd like to think that Super League or RFL do more to provide more rules and therefore opportunities for young players. So yeah, absolutely all for the higher standard of player coming over and adding to our game, but probably like to see more opportunities for young players and less overseas players. And that might be something what happens because the game's been hit financially by what's happened this year, and it's certainly cheaper for any club to produce a player who's come through their system, as opposed to bringing a player from overseas. So maybe it's something we'll see. We've definitely seen more young players being given an opportunity because of the turnaround fixtures this year. There's been instances where I think some teams have played four games in 2 weeks, which that takes a lot of recovering from, and it's meant, more young fellas have been given an opportunity. And I think across the game, they've all done really well, and there've been a great credit and reflection on and the academy systems at all clubs in Super League. So hopefully that might help people realise that the talent's there, that they just need this opportunity, and sometimes that opportunity is not always there.
And is there a common thread between those players that go on to the NRL or go on to the kind of very top of the game? Is there any common threads that you've seen from players in this country that have been able to go on and succeed at the highest level?
It's difficult that without actually knowing, I gave the example earlier of a player we've lost last week who's gone to the NRL at 17, 18 years of age. And for him, it's the character, it's the hard work, it's the dedication, it's the focus, on top of, underpinning some natural ability as well. But yeah, it's probably not for me to say. I don't know enough about those other players that have come from other clubs and what have you. So yeah, it's hard one to comment about.
So I guess last question for me, alluding to what we said there, and you can go player or coach, up to you here, which is who's the best player or coach that you've worked with or against, and why?
Oh, you've caught me off guard with that one. Yeah, there is someone, a player we've got in our environment. I won't name him because he is so young. So I don't think it'd be fair because it probably put a lot of pressure on him at a young age. But we've got a player who is in our academy environment, and he's probably the most impressive player I've come across. Because what tells you everything you need to know is he has the respect of his players and players who are older than him, and he's happy to challenge players around improving the environment, around their standards, around how hard they're working. He's liked and loved by every single member of staff who recognise just his characteristics, how willing he is to work. Probably physically not as advantaged as other players, but makes the absolute best of what he's got. Very self-aware, very driven, as I say, and just probably just ticks all the boxes in terms of what a young player and the type of player we want our environment to produce. And I don't think as a department or an environment we're taking an awful lot of credit for that. It's probably just who he is. That's in him, and we've enhanced it to a certain level. But yeah, very, very driven, very hardworking, very focused, and just some players just sometimes understand what it takes, and then some players, and that's from the moment he's walked through the door. And then for some players, it's a real process of education and being in the environment for a long time and getting it wrong and having to point out what good and what professional looks like. So probably not answered that very well, but caught me off guard.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. Well, Darren, listen, I really appreciate your time. And I think everyone will be saying enjoy getting back on the pitch, because that's the bit that we all enjoy and love doing. So I'm sure you and the staff and all the players will be buzzing to get back there as soon as you can.
Yeah, definitely, mate. And you too. Fingers crossed we get a good run at it as well.
Yeah. All things being well. Well, stay safe, and hopefully I can catch up with you again soon.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you, mate.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Initiative podcast with me, Michael Wright. Please remember to follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram at the Sports Initiative Podcast, and share this podcast with friends and family. I'll see you next week.